so welcome to GNR. This is the Thunder Round. We want to break down why we feel the way we feel about the Many Saints of Newark movie, recently released on October 1st. By the way, please remember to hit that thumbs up button if you haven't already, and subscribe to our channel so you get more notifications when we get more products for you. But started off, Russ, let us know, what did you really think about this movie? A little bit more detail.
Well, for me, it was anticipating. I think we had talked about it before, saying we had wrapped up and took our little summer break, how we were ready for the movie, it coming out on your birthday and everything. And, the time that we've all vested in watching The Sopranos. Great series, from the time it was on from 99 to 2007. And after a 14-year hiatus and the way that the show ended, which my brother already said, David Chase is notorious for, leaving kind of stuff out, leave you guessing, you can develop it yourself. So coming into this, ready to see it, got to watch it a couple of times actually. First time going through it, it was just for me, starting off with the setting, it wasn't so bad. It was, supposed to take place in Jersey. It started off with the narration of Chris Moltisanti,
Right.
giving his narration from the grave, and it's a movie based on his father's life. Now I don't know how he can tell it in any perspective other than being a child, or
Right.
but he's included in it, and that might be something to lead down the line. Other than that, as far as like the characters, I did like the actor. I'm sorry, I get the name, but who played Dickie Moltisanti. I thought he was.
Ebola.
Thank you, I appreciate that. Really genuine. Held well. And as far as like, excuse me, gentlemen, the plot or the what was it, the storyline, it just kind of left me disappointed, like an episode of Sopranos that I specifically pointed out, Pine Barrens. That's an episode in season 3 where Paulie Walnuts and Chrissy think they had killed Slava's friend who was doing laundering for Tony, and they go to South Jersey, that's where Pine Barrens is, to bury him. He ends up escaping, and he gets away. It never came of anything after that, towards the end of the show. So that always kind of left me a little like, lagged. So coming into this, I'm like, ready to see where's it going to take off or go from. And also anticipating seeing the debut for Michael Gandolfini, which is the late James Gandolfini's son. And well, he doesn't come into the movie until like pretty late, and for him to come in as late as he did, I don't think they gave him time for character development really. Timelines are kind of, I don't want to say misplaced, but it just threw me off. Once it got to the end, I'm like, well, David Chase, good for you. You got my undivided attention for another letdown for me. So, that's where I kind of left with it. All in all, my ranking, it stands, that's a F for me.
Yeah, I agree with you, because, like for instance, I know this was not a story about Tony Soprano, but it was a story that involved Tony Soprano. And so Tony Soprano is an established character in our culture, and we know things about him. So when you tell a story that involves him, you gotta use the things that we already know. So for instance, the setting, it was in Jersey, but one of the main settings in the TV show is Johnny and Livia's house. So why did this house in the movie look nothing like Johnny and Livia's house in this show? And it wasn't that they couldn't do it, because Hollywood Dick Moltisanti's house was similar to that. You know, he kicked the wife down the stairs, just like Janice kicked Ralphie down that set of stairs. That house was constructed similar to the way the other house was, you know. So why couldn't they have used that as the main house? And then when did they move to the suburbs? I mean, I know that they referred to the time where Ralphie and them were running a scam, and they were talking to the black businessman. He said, "Oh, your father moved to the neighborhood," so that's when Tony's father moved to the suburbs. And they laughed, a great joke, whatever. They may have said that one time, but every time they showed his parents' house, it was the same house, not in the suburbs, not with no two-car garage in the front lawn. It was in the city, you know. And so I just can't understand why they strayed away from one of the main settings that we know about Tony Soprano. Right. You know, they didn't show us Silvio's house or anybody else's house, you know, but we know that Tony's parents lived in this one particular type of house. Also, too, I don't really think they did their research, you know. They definitely didn't binge watch Sopranos like I did before the movie came out. You know, they made a lot of different stories that weren't connected, but also they didn't know about things they were bringing in. They want to mix in other things, so they want to mix in Frank Lucas. So every other story that we know about Frank Lucas is that he was a reserved, you know, downplayed his wealth, wasn't flashy at all. So now he's sitting at the stables with this infamous mink hat and, you know, mink coat that we all know he only wore one time when he got busted. Then he took it and burned it. He never wore it again. So now he's at the stables with it. But they didn't do their research to where they mixed in different things that didn't. It was kind of like the Forrest Gump, how Forrest Gump always stumbled into things. You know what I'm saying? They stumbled into things in this movie, and it led to the riots or whatever. Okay. The cast, you know, I wasn't upset with the cast because I could see where that could have been a young Paulie, or that could have been a young Silvio, or that could have been a young Junior, you know. But I was upset about Johnny's character. I'm going to give him a little pass, though, because Johnny was always a flashback, but he bore no resemblance to the character that we all know. Johnny Soprano. Didn't act like Johnny Soprano acted. You know what I'm saying? Again, he was always a flashback, so we have nothing really to compare him to. These other people, though, we definitely know who they are. And again, I know it's not about Tony Soprano, but these are people in Tony Soprano's life. So Silvio is not Tony's elder. He's Tony's contemporary. And Silvio was definitely not Junior's contemporary, you know, the way they portrayed in this movie, you know. So Paulie may have been slightly younger than Junior, I would think, but Silvio was younger than Paulie. And in this movie, they're all the same age. They're all running around. Why would Silvio need to rob Feature Lamanna's car game with Jackie Aprile and Tony and Ralphie when he's already well established running with Dickie and then also too, all these guys work for Dickie. They didn't actually work for Tony's father. They worked for Dickie. But nobody talks about Dickie in the show. Nobody wanted to avenge him when he got murdered. They just go ahead and let Harold move up in society because Dickie's gone. Right. So it just was like the storyline. What was it about? You know, like I said, they didn't avenge Dickie. And he didn't even show Tony anything. He tried to separate from Tony. So I just felt this movie was a letdown. They used the Soprano fame and allure to bring us in. But then they're right. This was not a movie about Tony Soprano, and it was not a movie about the Sopranos that we have come to appreciate over the last 2 decades. You know, so it just was a letdown for me.
Yeah. So I generally agree with the panelists on the discussion tonight. All my boys, I agree with you guys about this movie being a bad movie, but I thought there were some clever moments in this movie. And I think that what David Chase brought us wasn't really a Sopranos prequel movie. David Chase brought us a movie about the race riots that happened in 1967. See, in doing some research about David Chase, I found out that he wanted to do a movie about a race riot that happened in Newark, New Jersey in 1967. That year, there's 159 race riots throughout the United States. It was one of the hottest summers. Okay, so under the guise of Soprano prequel, he gave us the race riots. Okay, and I believe he did an outstanding job and introducing a new character to the show, to the whole franchise in Harold. But let me discuss why I thought this one was bad, and then I can get to Harold, okay? Because Harold, I think, deserves a whole new separate show or an analysis. But let me just go about, I made a list of things that were bad, and I'm going to read it off to you. So give me 1 second, guys. So this is what I thought was bad about the movie. I made bullet points. Okay, why was Dickie's father, Hollywood Dick, not made if he made more money than Made Men? I didn't understand that. The man's like 67 years old and has been made, but you're making more money than Made Men.
That's kind of like dealership.
Okay, that didn't make any sense.
Right.
Okay.
Right.
Another thing that didn't make any sense to me, and what is that averse to all mafioso stuff we watched in the past, documentaries. How was Dickie's uncle allowed to live after killing a made guy in the DeMayo crime family? Explain it to me. How can you kill somebody?
About that.
Yeah, how can you
say about that?
Yeah, how can you kill somebody, a made man at 25 years old, and live to talk about it? Okay.
But you know what? I think the prison stuff was all his money. I think that was his Melfi, his therapy.
His therapy, right? Exactly.
People have said that
there when something bad happened in his life.
You
know what I'm saying? So,
but you know what though? In the beginning, when Christopher was narrating the movie, he said, "My grandfather and his brother." He called that, So it wasn't. Yeah, this is a real person. Okay,
but would he have been allowed to live?
Huh? Right, but the thing is, we don't know. You know, that's the whole thing. We don't know. But the thing is that he said, my grandfather and his brother made more money than Made Men, and I'm like, oh, so your grandfather, he's like 67 years old, and he's not made. I didn't get that. So let me go on the bullet points here. Okay, so the third one. Why haven't we seen the head of the Mayo crime family yet? Is this person like a unicorn, Santa Claus? We did a prequel movie about Santi. Huh?
He showed up at that funeral and just went into that back room, and Tony was like, "I wonder what they talk about in there." You know,
the head of the family.
Yeah.
I missed it. I totally missed it.
Exactly.
Exactly.
I mean, why can't we see this guy face sit down? We know he's an old man because Tony Benedetto, who said that, I think he said, it's weird seeing my cousin Tony at the old man's table, at the head of the table now.
Right.
So that's one. Okay. Then, like you said, Glenn, the ages of the characters were off. Like Silvio and Christopher, I thought they were off. Okay.
Yeah.
And the guy who plays Silvio, I felt like he wasn't doing an impersonation of Silvio versus acting.
Yes.
It was like he was doing an SNL skit of Silvio. I'm like, dude,
he binge watched Silvio's parts.
Yeah, like
binge watch Silvio's parts. Yeah.
Right, you play Silvio, you know.
Yeah.
And then, okay, so another thing too that makes sense to me, you know, the Immaculate Conception. Dickie goes and tells his uncle in prison, my wife is barren, she can't have kids. But lo and behold, Christopher is born. How the hell did he ask Christopher if your wife is barren? Where did she get? Did you get another woman pregnant? You know what happened in between?
And it looked like the woman was almost the same woman except she had the
right.
So
That's
I was wondering, like, wait a minute, I thought Joanne Blundetto was Christopher's mother. Is Giuseppe is his mother?
Right, and that's why got played by that. Like, what the hell?
I'm thinking to myself, like, how's this possible? Okay, let me go on, guys. And then I thought Dickie had a drug and alcohol problem. We saw one frame of him swigging down a pint of vodka, and that was it. Throughout the entire movie, he was being functional to me. He wasn't shooting up heroin, taking any drugs, drinking any alcohol. He was functioning well. Okay, he was handling business. Okay,
right.
So I didn't understand that part. And then finally, this is what I'm saying. Finally, for this show. The way he was killed, the reason why he was killed, the way he was killed, well, not the way he was killed, the reason he was killed was dumb, and the person killing was dumb. Okay, and let's go back to what you said, Glenn. In the movie, they showed us that Silvio, Paulie, and Pussy all worked under Dickie. Now, if Harold had killed Dickie, one, wouldn't they be talking about it throughout the Sopranos season, like, hey, we had to kill Harold because he killed Dickie?
Yes.
Or wouldn't they talk about Dickie more because it worked under Dickie? The only person that mentioned Dickie Moltisanti was Tony Soprano, okay?
Mm-hmm.
The only one throughout the seasons of 6 seasons Sopranos that talked about him extensively was Tony Soprano and Christopher a little bit and his mother, but it was him. So this guy was an integral part of the family. He had guys working under him, but no one talks about him. It didn't make any sense. So
no one avenged him.
Right. And this
no legend at all.
Right. And this is why it didn't make sense that Uncle Junior killed him, because I'm like, well, it would have made sense where they showed him betraying the family, being killed, okay, because he did something against family, or being a drug addict, an alcoholic, or not just swinging a pint of vodka in one scene, and that's it. You know,
he didn't drink the whole thing.
He took a quick swig, and that was it. Like, all right, you know, let me go back and kick it. It would have been better if they showed him doing something against the family, like betraying the family, being a drug addict, you know, maybe, being an informant, and then they had to kill him. But to have Junior kill him because he made a slight against him a couple of times. And people, I was watching some YouTubers in the review of the movie, and they were saying, well, it makes sense. No, it doesn't make sense, because they were saying, well, because he did the same thing with Tony. No. The reason why he tried to kill Tony is not because of Slice. It's because Tony was doing things, is compounding stuff where Jack, when he had what's called Christopher and Brendan Falone, they hijacked the truck, and then he had his captains. Then they made a mockery of Junior, where Junior thought he was the boss of the family, but it was really Tony running things. So he found out later and realized that he was a stoolie. He was basically a figurehead to take the fall if the FBI came down the family. And that's what triggered him to say, let's push this button and get rid of this guy. So when they said, you know, I'm like, wait a minute, this makes sense. So Uncle Junior got mad.
I'm gonna take you back. I'm gonna say what made him want to kill Tony is, like I said, he thought he was the boss.
That's right.
Precisely.
Because Tony put him in that position. He thought he was the boss. And then he finds out from Livia that 5 of his captains have their mothers at Green Grove Retirement Home.
That's right. Yeah.
It's like, well, dang, if they all can't, they must be making a move against me.
Exactly.
So what logical mob boss would not try to take out the leader of somebody that was trying to make a move against him, family or not?
Precisely. You know what? You're right about that. I didn't think about that.
Rational at all.
Yeah.
He acted very logical as far as, okay, I'm not a mob boss. I don't know if that's the playbook, but sounds to me like if you find out that your captains are meeting secretly behind your back, you would take out who you think is the leader of that group. You know, so why would we all of a sudden, when we know this about Junior, we know Junior's character, now all of a sudden we're gonna believe that he was just petty like that he just because this guy was laughing at him, he fell on his back, so now he's gonna take out one of the biggest earners in the family. I mean, no, that's not his MO. That's not how it works.
And then piggyback what you said, Junior knew that Dickie was one of the biggest earners. Dickie in this movie was portrayed like a numbers man. He knew how numbers flew. You know his business model. He said, okay, you bring this kind of money, blah, blah, blah. So for him to kill Dickie because of a slight, it didn't make any sense, you know? So I was like, okay, this is bad writing, because show us something where it gives a reason, a rhyme and reason why no one in Sopranos throughout 6 seasons talked about this guy besides Tony. If he was a rat, or if he did something against the family where he was killed, almost like when they killed Big Pussy. You know, when they killed Pussy, they didn't want to even mention his name. They said, we don't like talking about it. Okay, almost like if you said something about, talk about Pussy around anyone, people be turned off, okay? But traitor was a traitor, you don't talk about traitors. But this movie, they have, I mean, if they felt that Harold killed Dickie, they will still talk about this guy. He would still he'll be praised and heralded for being a top earner, or a stand-up guy. And you know what too? So another thing I wish this movie could have showed us, and Glenn and I talked about this extensively, where you cannot put 6 seasons of great content in background 2 hours. I want to see this storyline where Tony talked about Dickie taking on a crew from New England. He said, he told Christopher, he said, your father was my hero. One time he took on this whole entire crew from New England. Why couldn't we see, you can't do it in a 2-hour movie, but if they made it a series, we could see the rise of Dickie Moltisanti. We could actually see his progressing matriculation in Underworld and becoming a top earner, okay, and getting that reputation in the streets of being a wise guy, a loyal wise guy, someone not to mess with, you know. But he didn't do it. David Chase, like I said, wanted to make a movie about the race riots in 1967. Harold was a phenomenal character. Leslie Odom Jr. played him, did a great job, because with Harold we saw the systemic racism. We saw that. We also saw racism, and we saw there were certain scenes, cinematographic scenes that I want to talk about. Let me end it here. One of the great scenes I want to talk about is when Dickie runs into a protest in front of the police department, and he asks the police officers what's going on. He tells them what's going on, and it was a chaotic scene. Newark is burning. Dickie goes back into the other side of town, where there's a restaurant. The guys are sitting back there having a plush meal, right? Opulence. One of the shots you saw was huge ounce of steak, and as you know, meat and steaks and so forth are expensive. So it's almost like a sign of upward mobility. If you're able to afford sizes of beef like that, living in plush settings, you're doing well, you're well off. And then Dickie says, you guys gotta see this. He opens the door and you see what's happening on the other side of town. Okay. So those were some scenes that I thought were great in the movie. And later on, probably do an analysis of Harold as a character, but I thought it was great. Harold's great. The movie sucked. Harold's great. The movie sucked.
and you know me, I'm always like, why do we have to, why we got to change what's already working? If the Sopranos are the Sopranos, they didn't involve Harold. Harold could have had his own story.
Yes.
You know what I mean? Because really, he could have brushed off, he worked with Dickie Money Sunday, whatever. There's a lot of backstory about Harold we don't know. How did he get to meet Frank Lucas? Just because you're both from South Carolina doesn't mean that you. It doesn't work like that. There's plenty of people in New York and New Jersey that have roots in South Carolina that don't know each other. Especially the top level, heroin king of New York, and the low level getting numbers off the ground in Newark, New Jersey do. You know what I'm saying? They don't necessarily have to rub shoulders just because they both from South Carolina.
Exactly.
So I mean, it just, like I said, that movie just irked me.
Well, I mean, there's one thing, a couple of things. I saw a parallel to the episode. I can't specifically point out the episode of Sopranos when Chrissy got made, and when Dickie was in the garage after he killed his father, after he killed Hollywood Dick, and he saw, I think Tony had saw the pigeon. Yeah, and Chrissy had mentioned it, and when he was getting made, that it was a sign of a mark, or was it a mark of death at that point? Right. So I saw that, and then there was another part where Janice and Tony had snuck off. That's in the movie. They went, and I don't know if the timeline played the same thing, because something that happened I thought was different in the
the carnival scene.
The carnival,
they tried to take too many little things out of the show and just stick them in the movie. The carnival scene, Tony's father was taking Janice to this carnival as a front, like they were taking their girls to the carnival, but meanwhile they were in the back handling business. Well, now all of a sudden it's a card game, and now all of a sudden behind this bust, he gets sent to jail for a couple of years. Whereas in the show, he came home the afternoon and they watched Ed Sullivan's show.
Exactly.
In the show, Tony said his dad went away to prison, but when he was in prison, they told him he was out west being a cowboy. You mean tell me they told that big ass dude his father was out west being a cowboy, especially after he saw him get arrested? Come on now. I mean, they just the shooting through the hairdo. They just threw that in there. I mean, they tried to just use the Soprano allure to sell tickets to this movie, and that's what they did. Michael Gandolfini's gonna play Tony Soprano. So what? He didn't do nothing.
You did right.
Like every other first-time actor in every other movie, they do nothing impressive. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So, and I'm sorry, unless he's gonna continue to play Tony Soprano, I don't know what else. That didn't show anything to me, Michael. I'm sorry.
Right. It didn't develop. Yeah, not develop.
I don't know.
Like I said, man, David Chase is clever because he wanted to make a movie by the race riots, and he couldn't get it greenlit So he said, you know what? I'm going to find another way to make this movie. And he did. Unfortunately, fans like us of Sopranos, we went expecting this great story about Dickie Moltisanti and even maybe seeing some parts of Tony as a child. And what we got spoon-fed was, let's spoon-feed them this scene, that scene. And the thing is, they had no continuity. It missed that.
Right.
You know, like the parts you just talked about, the continuity wasn't there. The ages of the characters weren't there. And things didn't make sense from a logical standpoint. So you left watching that movie, scratching your head and said, I got it. You want to make a race movie. That's what you want to do. You lied to me. I mean, like you said, Glenn, you want to do a Harold movie? Do a Harold series, you know?
Yeah, fine.
You know, I'm all for it. I'm all for seeing, you know, Harold and him matriculating in the underworld and evolving as a man and trying to get that freedom, you know, and dealing with the male crime family. That would have been great in an 8-10 part series, but not just throwing him in, because like you said, Glenn, throwing Harold in took away from the movie. It took away from us focusing on the main characters that we watched 6 seasons of and was trying to understand better, you know. And what we saw was, you know, people impersonating people, not really acting, impersonating them. And it was disjointed, you know, and, you know, left us will scratch our heads like, okay, you know, but more than likely, I think there'll probably be a series. Hopefully they'll say, you know what, let's make a series now from Tony. This, you know, we can salvage this a little bit and go to and make a series.
That's right. Yeah. Right. And why not? You know, HBO, they can do it. And I'm sure it's probably in the works. And guess what? 2024.
Yeah. Look, we can spend all night talking about how horrible this movie was, but we're not going to do that. We're going to wrap this up. I can't wait till we talk about this Bond, No Time to Die, but that's a whole other episode. Again, if you like this, please hit the like button and subscribe to our show. We thank you for watching, and I'm Glenn.
Nabor.
Russell, peace world.
Take care, y'all.